Hi, everyone. Welcome. See our attendee numbers trickling up there. Give everyone a few minutes to join, a few seconds rather. So while everyone is joining, I want to give a warm welcome to all our alumni of the University of Michigan. I'm Brooklyn Posler, and I'm the Associate Director of the Alumni Career Program. Thank you to everyone for joining us today. I'm very excited about our session as we dive into the generations currently represented in the workforce and how to capitalize on your generational experience in the job search. As we wait for some of our attendees to join us, I wanted to cover a few housekeeping notes before we get started. So this is an interactive webinar that is being recorded. The recording will be shared in a follow-up email and will be posted to our video library on our website. Please submit questions to our speaker through the Q&A feature in the toolbar. We'll do our very best to get to your question, but it is possible we may not get to them all. The chat feature is also active. Please feel free to participate in the discussion with other participants throughout the session in the chat section. So to kick us off in the chat, please let us know where you're joining us from. I'm here today in Ann Arbor, Michigan, with my colleague, Haley Briggs. Haley is the Associate Director of our Alumni Education Program. Haley, do you want to go ahead and introduce our speaker for today?
Yes, thank you for the introduction, Brooke. I am happy to be here today with you all, and we are very excited and very grateful to have Portia Parker Griffin with us to delve into our topic, setting yourself apart during the job search, regardless of your age. So I'm just going to share a little bit about Portia. Portia Parker Griffin is founder and CEO of Fly High Coaching. She is a professional certified coach, a Myers-Briggs Type Indicator Master Practitioner, and an Energy Leadership Index Master Practitioner. Portia attained her master's degree in industrial and organizational psychology and has a BS in psychology from the University of Georgia. She also served as an associate training coach for the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching and has been recognized as a career expert by LinkedIn. Portia has served as a career contributor for Biospace and has been featured in FlexJobs, Levo, iOffice, and the Rochester Business Journal. And she currently hosts the Career 101 podcast. With that, I will turn it over to Portia.
Well, thank you so much for that introduction, Haley. I appreciate you and Brooklyn for allowing me to be here today. I'm really excited to share this information about how to stand out and really set yourself apart from all of the other candidates out there. We know that it's a very competitive job market, I'll say right now. And I also know that your time is precious. So I really appreciate you making it a priority to be here. We're going to cover a lot of information today. And also at the end, towards the end, we'll share a special resource about how you can put this all together for yourself. Okay, so I like to start off with a quote. All our dreams can come true if we have the courage to pursue them. And that quote is by Walt Disney. And I don't know how many of you know about Walt Disney's bio, but it was very difficult for him. He faced a lot of setbacks. And in part, I think it's because we didn't have all of the technology that we have today. And when you think about a job search, courage is vital. You need the courage to put yourself out there, to be critiqued, judged, and possibly rejected. An effective job search also takes courage to keep going, even when you're not seeing the results that you want. It also requires the courage to try something new. So that might be a new career or just a new way of doing things. So when I talk about courage, I want you to keep this idea in the back of your mind during this presentation today. So you are in the right place if you want to understand the main generations in the workforce and how they think. If you want to learn what the generational stereotypes are and how to set yourself apart. If you want to find out the 3 biggest challenges people face during their job search and how to overcome them. And then also, if you just want to be a fly on the wall, that is fine, to help with planning for your future career growth and development. As the ladies mentioned earlier, this is going to be an interactive presentation. We have some polls, and we definitely want to know your thoughts. So Haley had a great introduction earlier, but for those of you who might have missed that, I am Portia Parker Griffin, founder and CEO of Fly High Coaching. And we specialize in helping professionals and executives to find their ideal career, generate an awesome income, and create a life they love. And we do that through career and business coaching. So some of our core competencies, I mentioned career coaching, job search strategy, resume and LinkedIn profile writing, interviewing, and also entrepreneurship. So that is a photo of me quite a few years ago now, and it's a memorable time because that was the very first conference that I was a speaker at. So I was really excited, and I guess it laid the foundation for me to be here speaking to you all virtually today. So let's talk about the big picture here. So for those of you who are into finance, or maybe you just talk to your financial advisor quite a bit, you know, and might have heard about the greater wealth transfer. And so when you think about the greater wealth transfer, to put it simply, a large group of people are reaching retirement, and a younger group of people will have to fill their roles in the workforce. And so this transfer will have a major impact on the US economy and globally. And this affects every industry out there. Another way to think about this from an employment standpoint is that it symbolizes a major shift in the workforce. So let's talk about generations today. One thing you'll see if you do a lot of generational research is that the beginning and the ending years of a generation can fluctuate a little bit, just depending on the source that you're looking at. I want to share the primary groups that are out there in the workforce so we can talk a bit more about them. So off to the far left in the kind of dark green bar there, that was the silent generation. Those were my grandparents. And a lot of the members of the silent generation are no longer in the workforce, but they were born roughly between 1928 and 1945. After that, when we move to the teal bar, we are talking about the baby boomers born roughly between 1946 and 1964. Then we move to the middle in yellow, where we see Generation X. So Gen Xers were born roughly between 1965 and 1980. And then to the right there in the gold bar, we see the millennials, and they were born roughly between 1981 and 1996. And then finally, off to the far right, we have Generation Z. So Gen Zers were born roughly between 1997 and 2012. So the last four are the primary groups in the workforce that we're going to spend some time talking about today. So with that, I want to see who we have on the line with us today. So this is our first poll question. What generation are you in? Are you a baby boomer? Are you in Gen X? Are you a millennial? Or are you in Gen Z? So we'll give you a couple of seconds to just let us know what generation you're in.
We still have a few more answers trickling in, but it is slowing down. So I think I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. Thank you for all who participated.
Great. Thank you, Brooklyn. I see the poll results now. It looks like we have mostly Gen Xers on the call with 62%. Then it looks like we have millennials at 24% joining us. Then we have baby boomers at 9%. And we've got Gen Zers at 4%. So that's great. We've got a little bit of everyone on the call. So there should be some lively discussion and hopefully some good takeaways and learning points for everyone in the different generations about how to set yourself apart from other candidates out there. So let's bring on the baby boomers. Baby boomers, like I mentioned, were born roughly between 1946 and 1964. So some general characteristics of baby boomers are that they had a strong work ethic when they've done, research, also a respect for hierarchy, and being very goal driven. They make up about 21.2% of the US population. So that's about 71.6 million people. What's really interesting about boomers is that 10,000 boomers are reaching retirement age every day. So they are a huge segment of the population. There are entire industries just focused on boomers who are reaching retirement. With that being said, many of our clients who are boomers tell us that they want to remain active and they still want to contribute to society. So that's part of the reason why they are still in the workforce. Also, one thing that I hear from some of our clients is that they can't afford to retire, right? When they crunch the numbers, they still need to bring in additional revenue to maintain their lifestyle. And then also there are a lot of boomers who are just continuing to work for their own personal fulfillment. So for each generation today, we're going to talk about the generations, and we're also going to talk about generational stereotypes. So we know that stereotypes are not always true. They are seen more as generalizations, sometimes thought of as labels. I'm just sharing them with you so that you all are aware of perceptions that other people, so this might be recruiters, hiring managers, maybe just people that you're networking with, some stereotypes that they might have. And the reason I'm sharing the stereotypes also is to help you set yourself apart so that you're not falling into the stereotypes for your generation, right? So this is our prep work, our planning. Some of the boomer stereotypes, with that being said, were that they blindly trust organizations and established processes. So thinking about scandals, perhaps like the Enron scandal, other scandals that happened years ago, where unfortunately a lot of boomers were taken advantage of in different ways financially. Also, a stereotype is that they're not tech savvy. They might be judgmental of others. So kind of use that back in my day kind of terminology and apply that to other situations. And then also another stereotype is that boomers are not innovative. So again, we know that these things are not true of all boomers out there, but we just need to know what some other people might be thinking, right? When we work with clients who are boomers, we really want them to emphasize in interviews how they are loyal, right? So many boomers stay in jobs longer than other generations, right? And so that can be a really important positive to hiring boomer employees. When they have done other research, they've generally found that boomers really wanted to work for companies that were doing the right thing, right? So not taking advantage of employees and things like that. Also, it's important to think about ageism, right? So preventing ageism. One of the simplest ways to do that is to remove graduation years from your resume and your LinkedIn profile, right? It's great if you graduated in 1977, but some people might make up their own assumptions about that, right? So we wouldn't want to include that information. Also, boomers can play to their strengths by emphasizing, how they have stayed current with technology, how they know the platforms, the processes that would be used in the positions that they're applying for. So let's get to know Gen X. Gen Xers were born roughly between 1965 and 1980. And some general characteristics of Gen Xers is that they are usually seen as independent, self-reliant, also valuing work-life balance and freedom. Many of our clients that are Gen Xers, they consider themselves to be in their prime earning years. So they're very serious about their careers. And that's why we have a lot of Gen Xers on this presentation today. Gen Xers, when you think about the population, they make up 19.9% of the population in the US, which is about 65.2 million people. I was having a conversation with a Gen Xer last week, I think it was, and they had a lot of different milestones, including financial milestones, just kind of mapped out for themselves in the next 10 years. So we tend to see that a lot with our Gen X clients. So let's talk about some Gen X stereotypes that might not be true, might not apply to you, right? So these are some observations that some people have noted in the workplace. So that Gen Xers are lone rangers, right, who don't collaborate. So this might look like someone who kind of keeps all the information to themselves, right? They might hoard resources and not share those with other people. Also that Gen Xers might be overly skeptical, right? So not necessarily open to trying new things or new ideas. Also that Gen Xers might not be passionate or engaged at work, right? So there's an idea that some of them might just be doing what it takes to get by, right? So those are people that I know we've all worked with in all generations, right? Who were just kind of clocking in, clocking out, and collecting a paycheck, right? Also that Gen Xers might be seen as pessimistic, right? So shooting down ideas perhaps in meetings or other brainstorming sessions. So to set yourself apart, right? If you're a Gen Xer, you don't want to fall into these stereotypes. We talk to our Gen X clients about how they can demonstrate their leadership skills, right? So talking about projects that they contributed to that were successful, right? And especially if those projects included managing other people, managing resources, coordinating different tasks or other resources, perhaps, depending on the type of project. Also, making sure to emphasize how they are open-minded to trying new things. So let's meet the millennials. Millennials were born roughly between 1981 and 1996. And some general characteristics of millennials are that usually they are deemed as being confident, tech savvy, and entrepreneurial. Millennials make up about 22% of the US population, so that's over 72 million people. Millennials are now the largest group of people in the workforce today. They are projected to make up 75% of the workforce by 2025. So there is a lot of conversation sometimes about millennials. And when I go in, sometimes people say, hey, everyone's only talking about millennials. And I think a lot of people were doing that just because of the number of millennials in the workforce. But of course, it's important to discuss all of the generations that are working. Also, millennials are deemed the most educated generation in the workforce because a large group of them have at least some level of college education or experience. So let's talk about millennial stereotypes. So these are all over the internet. Many people have heard these, that millennials are entitled or self-focused, right? Only concerned with themselves and what they have going on, maybe not thinking about the entire group or team of people. Another stereotype of millennials is that they're lazy and they don't follow through on their tasks or their commitments. Another one is that they might be seen as disloyal or job hoppers, right? Changing jobs very frequently after, months or maybe just a few or a couple of years. Also, another millennial stereotype is that they have poor communication skills with others. So maybe that just might be lack of communication or very little or minimal communication, and the other person doesn't necessarily know what they want or what they think. So when we have clients who are millennials, of course, it's important for them to think about setting themselves apart, right? So they're not falling into these stereotypes. So we talk about proactively any brief job positions that they've held or any gaps in employment in their resume and how to present those, not only in their resume and on their LinkedIn profile, but also how to talk about those in an interview, for example. Also, when our clients are millennials, it's very important for them to think about past experiences that they've had to really highlight and show their dedication, their loyalty to the organization that they worked for. We also discuss in-person communication skills and presenting yourself to other people, making sure you're doing that in an effective way. So let's introduce Gen Z. Gen Zers were born roughly between 1997 and 2012. With Gen Zers, the great thing is more and more information and research is coming out every day about Gen Zers. So we're adding to our list of their general characteristics. They are usually seen as valuing independence and individuality. Also, Gen Zers, a lot of people consider them to be the first true digital natives, right? So that means they've got little to no memory of the world prior to smartphones and the internet and all of that. Also, Gen Zers are usually seen as more ethnically diverse than previous generations, and they make up about 20.5% of the US population. So let's talk about the Gen Z stereotypes. Again, so if you're a Gen Zer, these are things that you really want to think about and make sure that you are not falling into. The first is that they are not focused with a short attention span, right? A lot of things going on that they're just not necessarily dedicated to any one thing. Also, that they might multitask too much. So that's along the same lines, but this could lead to lower levels of productivity than perhaps other employees in other generations. There's also a stereotype that Gen Zers are addicted to technology, right? So all of the devices, all of the social media platforms, or at least most of them, right? And so having a reliance on that. And similar to millennials, Gen Zers have the job hopper reputation to a degree or stereotype. And they are also seen as, people who might ghost an employer or a recruiter. We network with a lot of recruiters. I talk to recruiters all of the time. We're actually about to have some recruiters on our podcast. And when it comes to Gen Zers, one of the primary complaints by recruiters is that they might just ghost an employer, right? So They're going through the application process, the screening process, interviewing process, and then they disappear. I had one recruiter talk to me about they had issued an offer to a Gen Zer, everything, ready to hire them, talk numbers, talk to everything, and the person just disappeared. So, as a Gen Zer, you want to make sure that you are not falling into any of these stereotypes by setting yourself apart. So for our clients who are Gen Zers, we make it a point for them to focus on communication as well. So maintaining eye contact, making sure that they do prioritize their in-person communication as well. Also that they, talk about proactively, again, any shorter term roles that they might have, gaps on their resume, how they discuss those transitions, and then also how they articulate why they want a particular role in an interview, right? And then what they can bring to that position that perhaps other people might not be able to do. Okay. So with all of that being said, you guys have the generational recap. That's bringing us to our second poll question. Do you feel confident in your ability to develop your career internally, maybe within your current organization, or externally when it comes to a job search or a career change?
I'm going to leave this open for a couple more seconds. We're getting a number of answers, but they're still trickling in. Oh, you guys are still answering the question. I hope everyone that had trouble finding the poll last time, it does open in a separate window, so keep an eye out for that. It looks like those are trickling down, so I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. There we go.
Okay, so it's pretty close to 50-50. 48% of people say yes, and 52% of people say no. I want to definitely let you guys know that you should not beat yourself up when it comes to the answer to this question. With things changing all the time when it comes to technology, the economy, just how things are done in so many industries, it's hard to keep up with everything. And so please don't beat yourself up about that. We're going to talk about some things that you can do to develop your career, specifically with job search today. But there are a lot of career resources out there. All right, so I want to transition a little bit now and talk about what might be holding you back, right, from getting interviews and job offers. And I usually call these things 3 common mistakes or pitfalls that people fall into that can negatively affect their results. I want you to think about these 3 things as really areas or opportunities that you might be able to improve on when it comes to your own job search and getting the results that you're looking for. So number 3 is that they have outdated or underwhelming professional branding. So this is when you haven't addressed the importance of your resume, your cover letter, LinkedIn profile, or for those of you who are creatives or in marketing, advertising, maybe your work sample portfolio or your website. And sometimes you haven't looked at these things because you haven't been on the job market in years, right? But these items are very important. For boomers, for example, I've had some clients who were boomers who told me they hadn't looked for a job in over 20 years. So they didn't have a resume put together or a cover letter. So, this wasn't top of mind. And I generally tell people that if you haven't proactively looked for a job in the last 5 years or so, and even probably shorter than that now, everything has changed anyway. So it's really important to stay current on best practices around your professional branding. Oops, I skipped ahead. So with that, we're going to talk about setting yourself apart, right? There are quite a few ways to do that. One of the most common things I hear people say is, you know what, I'm a good writer. I can write my own resume. And you might be a great writer, but resume writing is different than other aspects of creative writing or technical writing out there. We know everything is done with technology nowadays. So 10 years ago, for example, you could say, hey, I'm just going to write a general resume and I'll use that general resume to apply for 5 different types of jobs. And that might have worked, right? Because human beings were actually reading the resumes and maybe envisioning you in these different roles. However, nowadays with software technology screening systems, some of you might have heard the term ATS, applicant tracking systems. Those platforms have really changed how the application process works. Your resume that you submit on any of the major job sites, so Indeed, LinkedIn, Glassdoor, or an organization's website directly, that resume needs to have the right keywords in the right frequency for the job that you are targeting. So that being said, a general resume would not be effective because it's talking about so many different things, it won't rank highly in those systems. So that is really important to know. And that's why getting professional support around your resume, doing a lot of research on the types of roles that you're targeting, and then how to adjust or edit your resume to be a good fit for those is really important. Okay. Also, you really want to think about your LinkedIn profile. Make sure that it's updated. Over 90% of recruiters are going to check you out on LinkedIn after they review your resume or your application, but before they decide to interview you. So they are using LinkedIn as a tiebreaker of sorts between candidates. Maybe there are 100 resumes that the software technology said, hey, these people might be a good fit. Someone's job is to go through those 100 resumes and trim that list down to maybe the 10 or so people that they actually interview. And they're using LinkedIn and other online searches to do that, right? And to find out more about you. So LinkedIn's very important, having a presence on LinkedIn. Also, I generally tell people that you want to make sure that your documents and your profiles demonstrate your value in less than 10 seconds. They're always out there doing research on what's the length of time that a recruiter is looking at a resume. The last 2 pieces of research that I read said generally between 7 to 8 seconds to make an impression. So that's in 7 to 8 seconds, they're deciding whether your resume is going into the yes pile or the no pile. So most recruiters obviously are not reading your resume or even your LinkedIn profile word for word before they're making that snap decision about you. So your formatting of your resume, the formatting of your LinkedIn profile, all of that really has to stand out with the important things quickly. Okay. And I know that's a lot. We actually help our clients with their professional branding if need be. All right, the second common mistake is that you don't have a job search strategy. So a lot of times, this is when people are doing a few different things sporadically, right? I'm applying for jobs online. And then I stopped, and then I'm going only to in-person networking events, trying to make connections and contacts. Then I started an online LinkedIn networking strategy, and they're doing a whole bunch of things that are not in a coordinated effort and very scattered usually. So that's the various tactics with little results. Also, you might change your approach from week to week or month to month, just kind of depending on how things are going there. So this can be a major, major stumbling block for a lot of people during their job search. I'm thinking back to the boomer I was telling you all about earlier, and they told me that the last time they looked for a job, it was in the classified sections of a newspaper, right? So for the Gen Zers on the call, they might not even really know what the classified section of the newspaper is. So they really did not have a job search strategy that was current and effective for them. So set yourself apart. How can you make sure that you have an effective job search strategy that works? In short, you really want to have a schedule of what you're doing and when to do it, right? So these should be activities that are important. Also, you want to maintain consistency and continue taking action. So I know that that can be tough, right? I want you to go back to that quote on courage that I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, right? So you want to stay consistent even when maybe you don't hear back from that recruiter after an interview. Maybe you reach out proactively to that recruiter if you are really interested in the position, right? And you're not afraid, right? You have that courage that even if they might say that they found someone else or it feels like rejection, that you can keep going. It's important to remember that you're really only looking for one job, maybe two. Maybe some of you are looking for two jobs, but not every opportunity is going to be a fit for you. So you really want to cast a wide net and not take things personally if you're not selected to move forward in the process, or if you're not, extended a job offer. Also, you want to follow up with everyone, like I mentioned about that recruiter. So networking contacts. I mean, you all are wise to be a part of the Alumni Association. I have a lot of clients who use networking through their Alumni Association as part of their job search strategy, whether that be offline, with informational interviews, or if it's online, maybe looking for other alumni at certain companies that they want to work for. There are a lot of ways to follow up with different people when it comes to networking. And then also mentors, right? So some of you might have a mentor in a formal program or an informal mentor who has connections as well and understands your industry and the types of positions that you're targeting, right? But really that follow-up is on you as the job seeker. And the number one challenge that people have is that they don't have support. So this is when you have the best intentions of doing the tasks that you need in your job search, of taking action, of putting yourself out there. But you have a life, right? And life can sometimes get in the way, right? Unforeseen events happen. You all have family members, friends, other obligations outside of work. And those can take over your time. And then they can really steal your time from your job search if you are not careful. Another thing I see when clients don't have support, and this is usually clients before they start working with us, they might go on what I call a job search hiatus for weeks or months. And this is really common if someone isn't thinking about that courage, like I talked about, right? They might get a little frustrated. Hey, I applied for a week or two. I didn't hear back from anyone. So this means I should wait 6 months. No. In most instances, it's a no. In most instances, you want to keep going there. Taking long hiatuses, if it's not for very specific reasons, can actually be detrimental to your job search. Also, when people don't have support, they start to feel stuck, right? So like they'll never land a position, they'll never develop in their career. So how can you set yourself apart here? I recommend that you cultivate a strong support system of coaches, mentors, and or other advisors. Again, you're on this webinar, in this presentation, that's great. So that lets me know you're starting to do that. It's really important when I talk about a strong support system of other professionals who don't have an agenda for you, right? So sometimes people think, well, I've got my family members, I've got my friend, I've got my coworker at my job right now. Okay. So it's great to have those people in what I like to call your personal support system. However, your family members, your friends, they are biased. They have your coworkers even, they are biased. They see you in a certain way. They have their own agenda for you, how far they think that you can make it, what they think you should be doing. A lot of times those are different than your own goals. So that's why you really want to work with other professionals as well on your job search. I think of a lot of clients, but one in particular, they were really going through this job search and their family member said, you know what, your current job is great. You know, you make X amount of money. I don't know, why you would want another job, right? But their family members and friends didn't know that they haven't slept in weeks. They're stressed out. They dread going to work, right? So these other people can love you, but they might not have the same vision that you do. You definitely want to remove or decrease your amount of time with negative people and influences. So these are what I like to call dream killers, right? They might tell you, you need to be more realistic, or, I don't know anyone who makes that amount of money, so I don't even know why you're shooting for that job. I don't know anyone who does that career, right? So you definitely want to limit that, if not remove it altogether. And then you really want to make sure that you've put systems in place to help you stay on track. So for everyone, that's going to be different, what systems you use. The first system that I recommend for most people across the board is your calendar. But when we work with clients, we get more specific on really creating a system that's customized for them. So that brings me to poll question number 3. Which of these challenges is the most difficult for you? Is it the outdated or underwhelming professional branding? Is it that you don't have a job search strategy? Or is it that you don't have support?
We've got that poll open and we've got responses coming in. Looks about half of our participants have answered so far. I know the chat has been filled with a lot of questions. I'm just going to take this time to let everyone know we will be sharing all the resources mentioned in the chat in an email that you'll get tomorrow. So no need to remember every single link that's been shared right now. But we're at about a 75% participation in the poll, and it looks like those numbers are trickling down, slowing down. So I'm going to go ahead and close the poll now.
Okay.
There we go.
All right. So it looks like a bit of everything. It looks like 40% say you don't have a job search strategy. 37% say outdated or underwhelming professional branding. And 24% say you don't have support. So these are all very common. Again, don't beat yourself up about, your answer here. Sometimes people tell me it's a combination of these different things as well. I've given you, just in this short period of time, some strategies that you can use in each of these different areas to make sure that you are on track. So I know this sounds like a lot because it is a lot. There is a simple way to put all of this together, but I will be honest with you and let you know that it does take work. It takes time, and it also takes having access to the right resources. So with all of this in mind, you've really got to be dedicated, right? So like I mentioned before, sticking to that schedule when it comes to, the support that you need, because just trying to do all of this, in isolation can really be challenging. So I love case studies. So I want to share some case studies with you. So I've got a baby boomer case study that I want to talk about for a quick moment. So Robert is an IT executive, and Robert, he had a 20-year military career, and then he had worked for 20 years at a very large organization. So he had a very interesting background. And then when we met, he was really apprehensive about his job search because he quite frankly was one of those people who hadn't really looked for a job ever. So what we did was we shared some of the strategies that I've already talked to you about today. Job search strategies. We helped him with his professional branding and putting all of that together. And Robert was one of those people where, he was a super student. Like he took everything and started working it right away, 100%. So within 2 weeks, he had already landed a position. So this Robert is really a super student. Most people aren't that quick, but Robert's a great example of a baby boomer who really put what we've talked about and gone actually even much deeper with than the kind of overview that we've talked about today. Now let's talk about a Gen X case study. Tana is a brilliant person all around. And when we worked together, she was in the process of completing her PhD, which was her 4th or 5th degree. And she was having trouble putting everything together in her resume in a cohesive way. So for those of you in academia or other kind of research-focused positions, you're familiar with CVs. She had a 7-page CV that was way too long for applying for jobs outside of academia, right? So she was also a military veteran as well. I forgot that. And so she wanted to highlight her transferable skills from the military, academia, the research she had done, and apply all of that into the roles that she was targeting in a compelling way, right? So again, so that recruiters could see her value in less than 10 seconds. So we helped her with that. Both of these case studies that I just shared quickly, they're examples of people who put in the time and the work to get results quickly. A question that pops up all the time, usually when I'm doing presentations, is, how long does this process take? For most professionals, you should expect a 3 to 9 month process of the job search. Now, if you're a super student, you can get that down. Like, the case studies I've shown you, but, if you just want to understand how to set expectations yourself and, maybe without support, that's what you should be looking at. But, it also depends on the economy, because we have a lot of people who've been looking much longer than that before they start working with us. So, I know that some of you are probably listening to this presentation and thinking that now is the time to be serious about your own job search, your professional branding, and your level of support. I have received so many questions from clients and prospective clients over the years that I created a free guide, and it is called the Smart Job Seekers Guide to Achieving Success. And this is going to be our 11th year in business working with clients. So we've worked with thousands of clients in over a decade now. And I pulled out what I think is just the best of the best in a guide to help people when it comes to getting started, right? So I was compelled to put this together to give, professionals and executives even more, tips, tricks, and strategies. So you can sign up for this guide because it was designed to help you by providing, insight, best practices when it comes to landing the role that you're looking for now. Brooklyn shared with me some of the questions that have been submitted ahead of time. And when I looked at all of them, I noticed that most of them are answered in this guide. So I wanted to share it with all of you. We talk about the smart job seekers mindset. We talk about job search strategy that works, how to know it's time for a career change. We talk about acing the interview and just other FAQs and tips. I like to say that just understanding these things at a high level will put you ahead of 90% of the other candidates out there. Right, so you can see the link here. I believe that Haley or Brooklyn might put the link in the chat for you all as well, but you can sign up for free and get access to the Smart Job Seekers Guide. All right, so I told you all I like quotes. So we will close with a quote. Productivity is never an accident. It is always the result of a commitment to excellence, intelligent planning, and focused effort. And that quote is by Paul Meyer. And what I really like about that quote is that I really think that it puts together everything that we've talked about, right? So you being committed or dedicated to process and excellence, planning for it, right? Having that job search strategy so that you can put in the focused effort with the support that you need. All right, and with that, I want to thank you for showing up and being present during this presentation. You can see my contact information right on the screen. I also have a link again to the Smart Job Seekers Guide. And then if you like this kind of information, we have a podcast. It's the Career 101 podcast, like Haley mentioned earlier. I talk about job search, but I talk about different aspects of your career as well. So definitely check that out on major podcast platforms.
Great. Thank you so much, Portia, again. And we're going to jump right into the Q&A. I know we received a lot of questions in advance, so we're going to try to get to as many questions as we can. But our first one was submitted in advance again. It centers on navigating reporting lines at work. So the alum is a middle manager supervising employees from an older generation. Can you offer some advice on navigating reporting lines where you're either reporting to or supervising someone from a younger generation?
So the manager was younger and then the employees were older, right? Okay, so there are quite a few ways to do that. Again, I would say the first resource before I give my answer here, we've got a lot on the podcast about leadership and leadership development. So you can definitely check that out. When it comes to different generations, it's important to remember some of the generational stereotypes and some of the frame of reference that your team members might be coming from. I would say the most common area of confusion or friction or conflict among generations that we've seen is communication and people's preferred method of communication and style of communication. So if someone is of a younger generation and their direct reports are of a different generation, it's important to check in with them and see how do they like to be communicated with, what are their expectations, so that when the manager is, sharing information, perhaps talking about accountability or plans, that you're making sure you're communicating in a way that that person likes, or that is helpful. And it's important not to assume here, even though we talked about, certain generations, maybe they like technology or texting. You really want to check in with that person. That's one of the first things that I would say. And then one of the best things that one of our clients actually did was she had one-on-ones with all of her direct reports, and she just asked them about their working history. What jobs did you really like? What jobs did you not like in the past, right? What are your, how would you describe a good manager? How would you describe a bad manager, right? And so just getting all that feedback from her team members, who a lot of them were older than her, it really gave her insight on what they expected and how they worked best.
That's great. Thank you so much. I think communication is so important, and it goes both ways, even if your manager or supervisor is younger than you or older than you. So that's great. And Brooke, I think you have our next question.
Yeah, thanks, Haley. So our next question, we received several questions actually about how to position yourself best in the job search to combat any concerns regarding ageism, whether through the resume or your LinkedIn profile. Can you expand a little bit more on the benefits or downsides of including your grad year on LinkedIn or on your resume?
Yeah, so the general professional resume writer rule of thumb is that you want to remove graduation years that are outside of the last 10 years. So that's like general standard rule of thumb. And that's for a lot of reasons. One, because of, potential ageism, and people just making assumptions, right? So if you graduated in 1998, but someone thinks, oh, the first line recruiter reviewing your resume thinks, oh, I was born in 1998, right? There could be some subconscious or conscious bias there, right? So that's the one most obvious reason why you might exclude that. Leaving years on, some benefits to that, specifically if it's within the last 10 years, it shows that you're current. A lot of our clients, they go and get additional certifications, take trainings, get additional degrees maybe, and showing those graduation years that you're current, you are interested in the topic that relates to your job. That's a good point of distinction when recruiters are looking, again, making a 5 to 10 second judgment on who's serious about this job. Oh, this person has done all this training in the last 5 years, and this person probably hasn't.
Thanks so much, Portia. So a follow-up to that, in keeping with the guidelines to have a resume be 1 page, maybe 2 pages maximum, many baby boomers, Gen Xers, maybe even some millennials have to condense down their experience by taking some things off of their resume. What advice do you have to keep the right things on to still make the job seeker look qualified without risking appearing overqualified or inauthentic by taking the wrong things off?
Ooh, very good. So one, this can be a bit specific on a case-by-case basis. So for some of the people with this question, you might want to reach out. Just send us an email and ask us for just a complimentary resume review. Some companies don't do that. We do it complimentary. We can look at your resume and let you know what we think about it based on your job target. So if that's you, send us an email. But first part of that question, not every resume needs to be 1 page. If we go back to standard kind of resume writing rule of thumb here, if someone is an early career professional, i.e. or not going for a management level or above role, perhaps if their work experience is 7 to 10 years or less, definitely a 1-page resume is what people expect to see. That being said, if you are applying for a management, director, executive level role, and you have 15 plus years of experience, a lot of times people make the assumption that you would have a longer resume than 1 page. So a 2-page resume is not a bad thing, if you fall into that category. So that's number one. Don't beat yourself up about that. When it comes to what should be included, that's very tough. I generally like people to think about, what's their, I like to call it secret sauce. What are those things that you've done that are above and beyond what the standard job description was? And how can you highlight those in a way to show the scope and scale at which you were doing something? So for example, someone might say, oh, I managed accounts in my portfolio and helped to improve revenue. Well, okay, that's significant, but it doesn't really let us know the scope or the scale at which you did that. Did you manage a portfolio of 25 accounts and, make sure to provide, a certain level of support on a monthly basis that helped to increase the revenue for each account by $30,000 to $70,000 a year? Right, that is taking that same accomplishment or contribution and quantifying it in a way that where it's really compelling. And a recruiter looks at that and says, ooh, I want to find out more about that and how they might be able to help us do that.
Thanks so much, Portia. And I know we are right at 1 o'clock, so I think we're going to wrap it up. We still had a ton of questions we didn't get to. We had questions about returning to work after a break, about navigating a career change. I know I will be sharing in our follow-up email a ton of resources related to those two topics. I think those are the most prevalent. But Portia, thank you so much for being here today. Haley, any last words from you?
Yeah, I just want to thank Portia again so much for sharing her time and expertise with us. Please feel free to check out her website. Again, that's flyhighcoaching.com. I think Brooke's going to pop it in the chat. And just a reminder to our alumni that a recording of today's session will be sent as a follow-up. Please access our website in order to review the recording and take a look at all the resources that we have on the website. And thanks everyone for joining, and go Blue.
Thank you, Portia.
Thank you.